Being the time and place, February 22nd at 5 o'clock. We're having a meeting of the Finance Investment Committee. As per, any person wishing to speak on the agenda will be heard at the end of the meeting. And the other thing is that although this is a committee meeting, there will be absolutely no voting whatsoever. That's not a violation of the Brown Act. It has been posted that we're having a meeting today. But there'll be no voting, no direction given at any time to anyone. This is informational for the committee to make a report to the board. And with that,
All right.
John?
Well, I'll give you a little brief overview. So today we're going to go over the water and wastewater reserves. There's some questions that were raised at the last time we presented some of the information, so we wanted to provide a little bit more clarity on the reserves. And then we're going to be giving you an update on the budget process, and we'll also be giving you an update on the rate development process. And we'll talk a little bit about the unbilled water issue that was raised last time too, just to try to clarify that issue for the board.
Great, thank
So
you.
with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, and he'll start us off, I think, talking about reserves.
Yep, I'm gonna, this one for you and Mike. And then I've got some, I got a couple more copies here, we can pass those down. Start off with, the first graph is one that we've seen, one that we've seen at the last, Finance Committee meeting and also at the budget workshop that we had. And there was questions about the graph, how it was set up, what is comprised of. So what we've done is start with the graph, and then we're going to break down its components. What those lines come from numbers, and those numbers represent something. So going to just jump over to where those numbers come from. Those numbers come from our reserve report. That's,
Do I have that here?
yeah, that's the other sheet that you
That's
have.
this one, okay.
The reserve report is made, the graph that you're seeing, we'll start there and then kind of work backwards. The graph that you're seeing is actually this line here, this column, the total column, which is all of the four other funds coming together. So it's just the total here, and this is what you're seeing. You're seeing the floor is the total of these two, the ceiling is the total of these two, and then when you take this total here, you're getting to the green line. So we're taking all four of them, putting them together. So what we're
And
going to,
just if you would explain to me the floor and the ceiling, if you show that graph again, where was that started at, what numbers, and what was the methodology of coming up with a number for floor and ceiling?
sure.
And hey, can you scroll down one more time? So we started off at 51, and did I read that correctly? Did we go all the way to the bottom? Did we end at 56 or no 45?
Yeah, at 45. Well, that ending at 56, but then we have the operating reserve, which comes out of that, and that's how you get to the 45. So the floor and the ceiling. The floor and the ceiling are in your budget
Right.
document, and it's the last two pages of the budget document itself. And that's these two pages here. This is water and this is wastewater.
Okay.
What those are made up of, these are our replacement reserves. These are our assets that came into service over time. And then the total of those assets by year is here. We have an index that we're using, the ENR index. In order to get to 2016 costs, we have the original costs. Plus we're using an index, what would it cost to replace today? And then the floor itself is the combination of 3 years of replacement reserves estimated going out the next 3 years. The ceiling itself is, in water it's 10 years, and in sewer it's 8 years. So we add those two numbers together, that's how we get the top line. We add these two numbers together, that's how we get the bottom line.
Thank you.
And then we add the operating reserve to each of those so that the adjustment is the same.
And we can get to where the operating reserve is put at?
Yeah, that
That comes
is
at some point in time?
this operating reserve right here.
Which the numbers obtained from where?
That is 180 days of operating, correct? Yes, the 180 days of operating for water, 180 days operating for wastewater.
Okay,
Without water.
180 days, is that what is asked for by some governmental agency? Is it what we choose to do to help our credit rating? Where does that 180 days, where does it say that?
It's in a reserve policy.
It's in our reserve policy, but different reserve policies in different districts consider
Is it
different things.
regulatorily driven, or is it just our board, is it comfort level from our board?
I think it's comfort level.
It was a recommendation from staff,
Mhm.
and typically, the 180 days is pretty typical.
Thank you.
So, what we have on that graph, I can just go back to it again real quick. So these are the two lines we just talked about. There's that ceiling, and this is over time. This is from fiscal year 07-08 to fiscal year 15-16. These are actual numbers. These are the amounts that were budgeted for those years, the floor and the ceiling, and this is where our reserve in total came in on those years actual. The last part of this graph here is what was budgeted. So we budgeted to be down here, and what I'm going to do in the next couple slides is I'm going to show you where we're at now, and that's why you have the statement.
But just to make sure I'm understanding this, at least over the last decade of the information that this graph references, we are well above 2+ times higher than where we were 10 years ago in our reserves amounts.
Yes, if we're just
So historically speaking,
we're just talking.
we've never been better. I know I know that maybe in 05 or 99 but my guess is, because, we probably, have we ever had this much reserves?
Yes, when we had, especially when we had bond proceeds, the low part is the recession, so you'd actually see it.
So it goes back up like in earlier years?
It'll go back up, I don't know off the top of my head how much. With debt reserves, we had almost 100 million at one time, but a big chunk of that was debt reserves, so that was probably 40 million, so we're probably at 60 million in the past.
But we look pretty healthy though, according to this, at least over the last decade.
Yeah,
Is that how you would see it?
We look at a trend, when we look at it trending down, and when we'll get a better look when John's going through the budget process and we project ahead.
Right, but we're sitting at 40,000, 60,000, 40,000.
Million.
Okay.
Yeah, but the trend, Tom, has been clearly up and away. It's just maybe this last
Yeah,
one
just
last
this
fiscal
recent
year,
yeah, absolutely.
we're budgeted for a dip, but I mean we've been trending.
Yeah,
you're talking about the green line.
Yeah.
You said the trend.
Could that
Yeah.
be because we didn't have any price increase that we should have had? Under normal conditions, we would have had a price increase by that time,
right.
but that was put off for whatever reason.
Yeah, or we didn't cut enough. There's two ways to fix that line.
Very true.
So let me go through now. The next couple graphs that you have in what I handed out isolate each of these columns just by itself. So we're gonna look at water capacity, we'll look at water replacement, we'll look at sewer capacity, we'll look at sewer replacement, and then we'll come back to the total. So when we go here, I'm just gonna come out here. Go down. Now we're looking at just the water capacity reserves. So again, this is actual, this is budgeted. So this is the trend that the water capacity reserves have been on.
Since '08, it's been on a downward trend. And the reason for that?
We've had projects that were built that use capacity money. We've had debt service that uses capacity money. And the amount of capacity revenue coming in hasn't offset the amount of capacity we spent.
So you're saying in the year 9-10, well, it doesn't really matter which one.
We're at zero.
But that's where we started going $2 million. All those are deficit numbers
From
in capacity reserves.
here. Yeah.
Right,
That's
Yeah.
cumulative.
That's
So it's
cumulative, it's not every year.
Yeah, it's not per year.
right. So since 2010, we've been on a downward losing spiral. And what have we built since then that I don't remember?
we had the Metal Arc treatment facility, but this is water reserve. We had the Twin Oaks Valley, the tank that was built. And the next, what were some of the other?
The biggest ones were we debt funded those, so they weren't technically not paid for yet. We were chewing into that as we pay our debt. It's principal and interest, our debt. So a lot of that was debt funded. So a lot of the expenditures going forward, a big part of it is debt service on the water side. Not where we took care of the biggest projects, so there's not much big projects coming up. It's just the debt financing.
Is there any earned income that's gonna show up in any of our charts?
Any?
Well, you say everything's reserved. Is there any earned income in all
Yeah.
those reserves?
Yeah, we get, I'll borrow this real quick too. On this right here, this top section is the revenue that comes into those reserves.
Part of that's investment earnings.
So what you have, I can drop back here again real quick, just pull this up. So what you have, these are the revenues that come in to each of these reserves. So what comes into the one that we're looking at right now is right here, it's this column, it's the water capacity. What comes in is, so far in fiscal year 16-17, we've had capital facility fees of 1.9 million that came in. We started the year with 10 million deficit. We've added 1.9 in revenues to offset that. And now we have expenses in these capital projects. One more there. Okay, San Lee Hill Road facility, the water sewer master plan, because we're just looking at this column. We've had desalinated water connection. We've had debt service right here, and some interest expense in there. So that's our capacity. So that 1.9 million was offset, by the 916,000 that was spent, giving us a new balance of negative 9.3, and that 9.3 comes along. So if I can do this real quick, I wish we had two screens to make it a lot easier. Now if we look at this, you see the star on this one?
Yep.
That star is where we are right now, as of January 31st. So this is, remember, these are actual, this is what we budgeted down here, this is where we're sitting right now. So if we were to draw this line like that, it would go like that.
So we expecting that trend to continue that way?
We budgeted it
Right.
to go that way.
Right.
What we're expecting, what can happen is there's still another debt service payment that needs to be made so far this year out of the capacity funds.
Okay.
That's gonna push this
Down
down a little
down.
bit. It's about $1.5 million. And if more of these projects that are on here that are paid out of capacity, if they continue to roll forward and we continue to pay for those projects, that also reduces the amount of capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Then the next one is our water replacement reserves. At the, I believe it was the budget workshop, Director Martin, you brought up, you should expect to see that green line peak over the black line because we had rate stabilization.
At least that's what we were told.
Yeah. Here's where you see that. Here's where you see it. Because now we're just looking at that other column, just the water replacement reserves.
Okay.
Okay, so there's 4 columns. We looked at one, now we're gonna look at another one. This is just that other one. Here's that ceiling for just water replacement. Here's the floor for just water replacement. These are actuals up to here. And then here's where we budgeted to be up here. Where it peaks up over here between 14, 15, 15, 16, that's where we had the rate stabilization.
That's where the desal kicked in.
Desal kicked in December, I think, 2015. Yeah,
The
midway
cost.
between those, yeah. Now, let me just show you where we are right now. We're pretty close
Where we should be.
to what we said, yeah. The revenues that come in to that are also on this sheet. We have operating transfers, which is net income In the private sector, they'd call that net income. Property tax comes in there, some interest earnings, and payment on the sale of land. That's the ballparks over here to the city.
Yep.
That comes into that
How
fund
many years
also.
do we get that?
We got one more year on that. I think it was 20 years when we first started.
Now, the rate increase that we did allow, 5% wholesale water cost, is that shown in here?
It will. Because,
It's not yet,
yeah, it just went into effect this month.
so I hope close that gap.
It'll push that star up, yeah.
Okay.
But also as more expenses come in throughout the rest of the year, that can also pull that star down.
Director Martin?
Yes, yes, sir.
Why does the money that we receive from the city for the baseball fields apply to the water replacement reserves and not capacity reserves?
It didn't have anything to do with increasing the capacity in our system.
Did it have anything to do with replacing the water?
No, it's funny, it's a good point, we call it replacement reserves. The better name for replacement reserves is everything other than capacity reserves. Yeah, we just call it replacement reserves, but capacity is unique because it's restricted by
This
law.
is kind of the catch-all then?
Yeah, exactly, everything else goes into there, so it's
Okay.
probably not a very good, not a good descriptor, but it just to kind of differentiate between capacity and everything else.
So then, now we'll look at the next column, the capacity and the wastewater side, and this is what we've had historically. This is 0. Again, these are actuals, this is budget. Where we sit right now is about there. We've got more capacity revenue come in this year. We're still under budget than what we budgeted, but we've had quite a bit come in so far this year. We've-
Let me ask a question, we passed on a rate increase
Uh-huh.
because we were told by staff that we didn't need a rate increase during the last rate increase time on the sewer. Do you remember that?
We passed the rate.
That's, this is
This is
capacity.
capacity.
It's different
okay.
than the.
Yeah,
Okay.
the next slide is going to.
So this would be for, like, so if there was hypothetically a rush of new development that came in and those developers were paying capacity fees, that could theoretically add to this, right?
That line would come back.
Push that star right there. Okay, this is the one. So now this is the replacement column right here. It's just those numbers, isolating that. There's the floor and the ceiling. Once again, we're here, the floor and the ceiling. At this point, we had rate stabilization up to here. In 15-16 is where we came back under. Where we sit right now is right about there. So we've actually straightened this out. We budgeted down here, and we're right about here. So we're doing really good in wastewater replacement reserve.
Comparatively to water.
Comparatively, yeah, or, yeah, if you look at it too. Sure.
Well, keep in mind too, Director Martin, that those, as drastic as those two down lines may have looked, the amount of money in between the lines that go horizontal, these, if you look at this, it's 10, 20, 30, 40, those were 2, 4, 6, 8. So, as bad as they looked, and they could certainly use a directional change, but it's not, if they were running at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, it'd be a whole different, there's a reason why we're, if you look at the full picture, we're still at 45, we have $45 million in reserves, right? Even though those lines are going down, shooting straight down.
Yeah, more than that.
56.
Or 50, yeah, sorry.
When you
So-
combine them together, yeah.
Yeah, which that takes us back to the first graph that we saw, and then
Yeah.
where are we?
That's the total that you're referring to.
Yeah, thank you.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so when I look at this, the questions I ask myself is, where do we want to be and where are we heading? So showing the low and the high is good, but getting guidance where we want to be between the low and the high would be helpful. And when you start to see those kind of precipitous drops, it's obviously a point of concern. And depending how steep it is and how close it is to the low, you get more concerned.
Sure.
But it's good news, obviously, that the star where we're projecting is better than what we had budgeted. So that's good news.
And the older our system gets, that's why you see that blue and black line creeping up. The more the more our old infrastructure comes into our estimate for replacing, so.
But the situation is certainly not bleak by just looking at this. I mean,
You gotta look at the long term, yeah, and that's what we're doing in the budget process, yeah, you gotta look out,
No, the debt service is bleak.
yeah.
As a private party, I would never wanna have that kind of debt service on me, personally. I would say, well, I'd wanna have it on the water company, why we have gotten ourselves into that much debt service and not paid it off. That's, over the years, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, as a person, if I had that much debt service, I couldn't make enough to sustain it.
And actually, that's what the analysts do, they assign the debt to each individual person, they say the Vallecitos has 60 million in debt, how many people do they have, 100,000, and so yeah, that is something that the analysts in the investment community looks at as well.
How much is our debt service a year?
We'll be sensitive to
About
that.
$5.5 million
$5.5 million a year on interest.
with interest, principal and
That's
interest.
principal and interest, yeah.
Well, yeah, okay, that's like a mortgage though, right? Pretty close to the same idea. Very little comes off the top.
We pay our principal every year,
Right.
yeah, so we're paying our principal down.
Right.
And, yeah, but there's,
Yeah, but if you look at the typical amortization schedule, you're paying very little principal in the
Yeah.
beginning years.
Yeah, that's the same thing, I assume, right?
we pay quite a bit in principal though. I can show you, I don't have it with me, but I can show you the debt service
What
schedule.
do we pay in
how much.
interest a year?
How much
How long?
we budgeted, get there real quick. On this page in the budget, we had,
Roughly.
2.5. 2.5, so about half.
2.5, about half of it goes to the final interest.
Yeah.
And the other half to principal.
and that debt service was incurred primarily for Meadow Arc and the tanks in Twin Oaks. Are
Twin
those
Oaks.
probably the two biggest contributors, or?
Phase 5 for Encina.
You see the phase 5, the
And then-
expansion at the Metal Arc,
And
and
Liz
the Twin Oaks tanks, yeah.
and Interceptor.
Yes, that's true, yeah, but that one of
And
the
the sewer
small
interceptor.
loans were for the intersection.
Yeah, and those are projects that are so expensive, you just don't have the cash to do it pay as you go.
Well, we, yeah, certainly don't have the cash, cause it comes out of capacity,
Yeah.
We're deficit there, yeah.
So you have to have the bond.
Sure,
to incur
yeah.
that.
Okay, thank you.
So that was just a.
Thank you, that makes a lot more sense than I appreciate it.
The next phase of what we're doing budget-wise is right here, and I've got some handouts, of course.
Thank you.
There you go. This is, what this, got something to go. And I'll explain this one here. See if I can just get a little larger on the screen. This is our salary and benefit for, we're looking at 5 actual years, 11, 12 through 15, 16, these are actuals. And then we have the budget for 16, 17, that's the year that we're in now. And then where we project to end this year. And it's early on this projection because other things can happen. We have line breaks, overtime incurred, other issues could come up. But right now, if we were to project where we're gonna be in June, we would say it's about right there. This column here compares what we planned on doing, what we said we were gonna do, and what we think we're gonna do. That's this column here and the differences. So if we just take that and look at it and say, okay, in total, we budgeted 9.7 million in salaries. This is water, wastewater, and salaries posted to capital. 9.7. We project we're going to come in at about 8.9, or about $771,000 below what we budgeted, just in salaries. Now benefits are here. Here's all the benefits. That's the retirement system, group insurance, Social Security, FICA, workers' comp, the 457 contribution, and then the other taxes and benefits were the SU, SUI, FUI, yeah.
Director Martin,
Yes, sir.
how are you gonna realize $771,000 in salaries reduction.
Are we gonna
I mean, yeah, I mean, you're projecting that, right?
If our projection holds true and we end the year at that number, that's the amount less than we budgeted.
Are you asking how did
But how?
that
I
come
mean,
to pass?
everybody got through the MOU. They got a COLA. They got an increase. You know.
Oh, what's driving the number?
Yeah.
Why is it that? Oh, okay.
I mean, it's impressive, but how?
If we look at this number right here, we have 3 3/4 less people in this fiscal year than when we started. We end the year with 3 3/4 less people. We have people on maternity leave. We have people who are out on modified schedules. So we had budgeted for them for 80 hours a pay period, and then they went to a modified schedule and they're working 60.
Yeah. So, I think it would be helpful that as we go through the budget process, if we could get a whole one pager on, to the extent, I understand there's privacy and there's leave of absence stuff, but I think some more information about that would be, I'd find it certainly, interesting.
Yeah, what I think, and that's fantastic. If you're doing it this year, that's fantastic. And I started on the board here in 12. And 12 and 13, let's use the 12-13 figures of 7.5 million. And since 12-13 up until 16-17, we haven't had a growth spurt. We haven't added all that San Alejo, all that stuff was done before then. So what I'd like to explain is how many employees we had at that time, 12-13, 13-14, 14-15, and just go through it by year to see where we've added employees out of curiosity.
Yeah, and to
Because
Director
that would be
Martin's
some
point
addition.
is the projected 16-17, is it a 1 year anomaly that, because if you look at it, it's never happened before.
What's never happened
Well,
before? Is that-
salaries have gone up
Oh, okay.
every single year, most years fairly significantly. And that's to be expected. I mean, everybody works hard every year and they're gonna get a raise and that kind of stuff, but is this just an anomaly or is this a new trend?
Well, I think what you'll see in the coming budget, you'll probably see another reduction in numbers, but I wouldn't say that's starting a new trend that every year you're gonna see a reduction in staff. That's obviously something the district
Yeah.
can't sustain, cutting bodies every time. But we're looking at the organization very closely and trying to find out where we can have reductions in numbers, either through, making remaining employees do more, or outsourcing or other activities. So I think we'll see that number come down a little bit. But I think overall it'll be in line probably with what we were seeing back in the 11, 12, 13 timeframe.
Well, again, the number I'd like to understand and know is 12-13 from 7.5, we're up to 8.9, to 1.4, 1.5, and I understand we have COLA and we have,
Yeah.
but how many employees have we added since that time would be my question. And are they new adds?
Yeah,
or new
John can
positions?
walk
Right
you
there.
through those numbers near the bottom of the
Yeah.
chart.
So right down here, this is actual by department here, and it says total funded FTEs, but these are actual people that we had working here on June 30th of 2012, June 30th, 2013, right? So on June 30th for 12-13, we had 103 and a half on that day. Now we could have had more coming in before that, right? And we got down there, or we could have started there and gone up the next year. The next year we held pretty steady, and we actually came down from 105, and I don't have numbers coming out this way. I do, but not on here. But we actually, when the recession hit, our staffing went, if we were to graph it, went like this. It dipped down where you're seeing it, and then it came back up where you're seeing right here. What we had a lot of retirements in those years where it came down. We didn't backfill a lot of those. We just made do. When the recession was going on, there was less development, so you need less of the community development department, when there's less people walking in the door. This bottom number here is the number of positions that we budgeted. So when we budget, for instance, in 16-17, we budgeted for 111 3/4 people, and we're projecting we're only paying 105 3/4 people, you get a positive variance.
Sure. Okay, my question would be, is we had 103.5 in June of 13.
Uh-huh.
We're not a growth agency at that point. And we got to 16-17, and we had 111.75.
Mm-hmm.
That's 7.25 more employees at that time. Now, since then, you've changed that 3.75, but you're saying that's a possible anomaly because people going out on pregnancy, people going out for disability. I'm just trying to figure out where I'm trying to figure out on your chart there where the staff was added as well. And I don't see it offhand, but I've just looked at this chart for the first time.
Sure. These 3 3/4 are gone.
Okay.
They're gone.
So you're 105.75 right now,
Yes.
but you were 111.75 last year.
That was the budget.
That's the
The
budget
budgeted number.
I'm sorry.
That was the budget number, yeah.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah, and that's,
But you were 115.25 in 15-16. So you've gotten rid of 10.5 positions.
budget.
That's
This is
Well,
budget.
yeah, we're comparing
The
budgets
number
to
above it.
actuals.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we ended the year with, let's call it 110 people, but we budgeted 115.
okay.
Yeah.
So a good number to look at would be the actual 15-16, the projected 16-17.
Right, so
You
that's
see
6
it's a
people.
$130,000 difference in about 3.75 people.
Yeah. So that's what this column here is doing, is it's taken the next step. Okay, this is what we thought we were gonna do, this is what we think we're going to end up, but let's take where we think we're gonna end up and compare that to what we actually did in the prior year. That's what this column here does. This column here says that last year, fiscal year, we paid $9 million in salaries. This year, we're projecting to pay, if we round up, it'd be 9 million again, but it's 8.9. So in actual to projected, we're under about $129,000 in salaries. And then kind of that number then kind of makes more sense. You have the almost 4 people. Because you throw in the raises and the steps and the COLAs and everything else.
So Director Martin, one of your questions is the 3.75 bodies. In a way, it's something you couldn't count on or depend on because you don't know when somebody's going to go out on a long-term sick or a pregnancy or whatever. But what I would look at, in addition to the actual funded FTEs, is the budgeted FTEs, and you can see that they kind of peaked in 14-15 at 115.5, and then it was pretty flat in 15-16, and then budgeted it's gone down by 3.75 bodies. And as I mentioned, we're looking at the organization, and I believe going forward for 17-18 we'll have even fewer bodies. So that's the maximum we can go, because that's what's actually budgeted and approved by the board. And even so, if we brought that number down to say maybe it's 108, I'm just throwing a number out there, we don't know yet. That means we couldn't go above 108, but we probably actually pay less than that because in the subsequent year there's going to be some reason that people are on modified duties or something. So what you actually pay is going to be less than what's budgeted in every year.
Thank you.
Okay, and my last item is, this is to look forward to our next meeting. Here's for each of you. And I'll put it up on the screen, but I've got more copies here. This is our budget worksheet. So if I hold up the budget here for a minute, what we have in our operating budget is,
It's a set.
so here's our operating budget right here.
Yep.
It has our revenues up top, and then our operating expenses by department here, which is what this is. It has our revenues here, and then it has our operating departments on that first page in total. We have our actual 15-16, that's where we ended last year, those are real numbers. We have our budget for 16-17, what we estimated, thought we were going to do in the first two columns. Now the next two columns are, again, where we project we're gonna end up. Where we think we're gonna end up revenue-wise and expense-wise. The next column is the budget for the next fiscal year, 17-18. What are revenues gonna be? Again, this is our estimates. Budgets are always estimates. Where do we think we're gonna be in 17-18, revenue-wise and expense-wise? Then we're gonna compare budget to budget. And we're gonna look at it in dollars and percents, because sometimes you could have a big dollar increase, but it's a very small percent. Other times you could have a very big percentage increase, but it's a very small dollar. Other times you could have both, right? Big dollar and a big percent. So what this will assist us in doing is just by looking at these two columns here, we'll be able to see, oh, that's a big percent, how's the dollar? Oh, it's a big dollar. Why is it increasing? Or why is it decreasing? And the big problem areas just kind of jump out at you, and then you can address them directly. So what these pages do, and there's 8 of them, so this is by total department. Now if we want to go into the detail of what makes up this number, this in pumping, 531,774 and 531, we go to the next page. And here we have that same layout. So here's our 531,774 and our 531. What makes that up? The components are the cost of labor across the top line, the materials and supplies used in that department, the outside repairs and service for that, and the power costs related to pumping. And then we have our total pumping. So then it's this number that goes up to the top when we look at it in total. And then we do this for all the departments. And we do it for water and wastewater. So next time we get together, there will be numbers here and percents here that we can look at and start to say, okay, what's going on? Is our budget going up? Is our budget going down? If it's going up, why? You know, if it's going down, why? Right?
Great.
And unless there's any other questions, it's
So it's a very detailed process we go through, and there's a lot of backup information that substantiates the numbers that you see on the first page that John was trying to explain. And maybe in subsequent meetings we can get into whatever level of detail the committee or the council, when we go in the full workshop, wants to, or the board wants to discuss.
Okay.
Okay, so that was all, that was what you wanted to cover?
that was it for you.
Okay,
Can you bring up mine?
yeah, Tom's gonna go over the rate development process.
First, I want to address some concerns that were expressed about water loss and unbilled water, and kind of put it in a top and explain that a little bit. Actually, the whole industry is a push to look at this and better manage water loss. I just wanted to share with you a couple of recent bills that were passed. The first one, SB 1420, was to every 5 years when you do your urban water management plan to include a water loss audit in there. And then more recently, these are the years that it passed, not the years effective, 2014. In 2015, SB 555 passed, and it said every year you're going to do a water loss audit and also have it validated by a third party. And DWR is the responsible Department of Water Resources, is a responsible agency that kind of tracks it. You've got to submit it to the
Who's our
DWR.
third party?
I'm sorry?
Who's our third party?
Third party or other, or like engineering firms, people you, other agencies that you, and it's usually not an agency, it's usually a firm that you hook up with. I'm not sure who.
And they just look at the numbers you provide them, and no guarantees of the validity of, like most of those companies, right?
There's a lot of there's a validity index that you have to do, and they'll look at your validity index, how close, how many estimates you're making, how it's a very involved process.
It'll be like a financial audit, so yeah, and to a certain extent they rely on the information you provide, but they're doing some independent verification.
Next slide. It's free software that they are provided by the state, and we're in the middle of doing that. It's a very detailed process. But the objectives of the audit, determine what your water losses are, and we'll look at what water losses and real losses are. But more importantly, that water audit becomes a basis and a reference for continuous improvement. They talk a lot about continuous improvement, and I'll get into that in more detail.
One of the reasons that we changed to Pearl, the new water meters,
Oh, I
Micro.
promise.
was because they were supposed to be much tighter on water. Is
More
that
of a
proven out to be true?
Yeah, there's a
Have you seen the savings?
hard to quantify, but that's what this water loss audit attempts to do. And it actually asks you how often do you calibrate your meters, or you doing meter so it really gets into detail. We're still doing the 2015 water year. That's how long of a process it takes. So
At
that's
the last meeting, did we decide to change this? We're calling it. Okay, right.
We talked about unbilled water as a percentage, and when we budget and do projections and stuff, that's a very key number that we put in. Our 3-year average has been 5.6%. These numbers are just examples out of AWWA manual, and they use it to do example equations and things like that. But this is what that column that has the whole bunch of numbers, the second from the left, that's the one in the software. You have to fill in all of these numbers as best you can to come up with water loss. So all the way to the right, you see revenue water and non-revenue water. That non-revenue water was the 5.6%, and just so you have a better understanding of what that is, it's all those little components there, the unbilled metered water. So yeah, we meter water for our facilities, and but we don't bill ourselves. Unbilled, unmetered water would be, our operational, we use water, flushing lines and things like that. Unauthorized consumption, water theft, the bigger your system and the more fire hydrants you have in your system, the more likely it is you're going to have theft. And then customer meter inaccuracies, that's what you were just referring to, Director Martin, and trying to stay on top of meters, changing out, especially big meters, and keeping them new and things like that. Systematic data handling refers to, I read the meter, now when do we actually get to the bill? So there's a lot of handling of data before it actually goes on a customer's bill.
So a lot of these, I'm going to assume, a lot of this is guesstimated.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah,
you round
absolutely.
it off to the nearest million gallons.
Sometimes you have to.
Except for the unauthorized, the customer, the systematic, which you went to at least 0.25, quarter of a million gallons. But
Yeah, these are just example numbers in there from the manual.
Yeah, these aren't our numbers.
This is not
This isn't
Vallecitos
BW's
data.
Oh,
These are just example numbers that they used to give you an example of what goes into
Yeah,
them.
the only piece that is Vallecitos data is the very bottom there, the 5.6% 3-year average that we have.
But do we have a chart that shows all of that?
Yes.
Well,
For
not,
us?
not for us yet. We're in the middle of.
We're in the
audit.
middle of doing that audit, and we have our next meeting in a week or two, I think, our fourth meeting. on that.
Your fourth meeting with,
It's the water loss
Yeah.
with the AWWA.
Technical assistance program.
Technical assistance
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
and you do that every year.
We
have to now.
This is our
We're
first
doing
full
that.
year of
First
doing
year
that.
having
First
it.
one,
Yes.
yeah. Because of the
Yes. And they go into
555.
detail. So
Is that a government agency that you're meeting with, or is that like a consultant, or like an auditor?
Well, there's an internal team. Mike is actually on. I'm not on a team, but Mike is on a team, so he can give you a little bit more on that. And then, are you meeting with your outside people yet?
yeah,
Or
and
you
it's
have to-
2 companies. I don't know the name of them. 2 companies that got together. One a California agency and one a consultant that get together
Do we
and
pay?
provide this.
Do
No,
we pay
it's
for
all free. It's all free. And our next meeting is actually here, so we actually don't even pay to go to. If we go to the meetings, if it's in Riverside, we have to pay the $40-50 registration or whatever. But it's here, so we don't have to pay.
Yeah, we host.
We're hosting it.
And then you guys had mentioned at the last meeting that some of our unbilled water is related to firefighting and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
We don't charge the fire department when they're putting out wildfires or
No.
when they're. I'm thinking of. I've been to a couple demonstrations at the emergency management center that they have over in San Marcos, and they have the mock-up of the building and everything, and they're putting up. They're practicing.
The city pays for that.
The
That's
city.
on a city meter.
That's probably metered.
Oh, that's probably metered.
That's
Okay.
If it is metered in. If it's coming
The
off
fire
the
stations are metered.
Yeah,
Okay.
but hydrant obviously isn't.
Okay.
Anyway, I just wanted to give you an idea of what we're looking at, and just let you know that it's an industry push too, but we're doing it as well. Go to the next slide, if you will, John. And in the old days, there was one number we looked at, from agency to agency, from year to year. We said unaccounted for water, and we actually called it that in our budget. Oh, John, make sure you're not calling it unaccounted for water in your budget anymore. But now they break it up into more performance indicators, and that's why this first year we're doing is kind of like a base, and then each year we're going to come up with these metrics and these KPIs to go forward and see how we're improving and what we can do to improve in each one of these areas. So that's what the water audit's all about.
Yeah, and I picture when the audit's done, whether it's a pie chart or whatever, but I always think in terms of pie charts, we could break it into the slices of what comprises it and then identify those areas where we can actually control it. So if one of the slices is lost water due to fire hydrants being hit, well, there's not much you can do about that, but there are other areas where you can have a focused effort to reduce the water use, and that's where we'd like to devote more resources to that.
That was it for that. But unless there's any questions, I was going to transition to the next thing here. The other thing that was of concern too is when we switch to this isn't a major structure change in our water rate structure, but how does it impact not just the average customer, but how does it impact all of our customers? Go next slide. So we took a look at. And this again is just using projected numbers. We don't have budgeted numbers yet, but just what we projected in the past. Not so much to see what the rate is, but what's the relative change. Before, when we looked at what we may have adopted, what the last plan that was done by Black and Beach, the average was 5%, but we saw some of as much as 60% change. Some of them were a major reduction, and maybe some were more than 60. I don't know. But this time I wanted to take a look, and we'll update these as we get better numbers, but to look at the impact. So this just is an example of 5/8 inch meter. Look at some of the usage. The highlight numbers are where the tiers break. The column all the way to the left is the current rates, and the projected 2018 is what we went over in our workshop. And just put a placeholder in there for now, and we're using the projected numbers that we have. And bottom line is when we look at the total increases, some of them we're looking at from 12.3 and a high, and then it goes back down and back up again. But really what you're looking at is anything huge in there that's a major concern other than just focusing on our average customer. Let's look at all of our customers, all the potential impact on all of them. And that's what this slide does for 5/8 inch meter customers. If you go to the next one. And we looked at 3/4 inch meters and see what that impact is. Let's just keep going. Go to the next one. And we looked at the bigger meters too. Again, not focusing on just one customer, but looking at all the potential customers of the district. And so you don't see those wild swings here, which is good. So we don't want to see. And one more. And then the bigger meters. What I didn't have here yet is. And actually, I've made some progress on it today, but the multifamily meters, we're seeing hardly any change with this rate structure.
Can you do me a favor, Tom, because I still don't understand this chart. I've been listening to you, I still don't understand it.
Sure.
If you just go across one line and explain
Yeah, absolutely.
exactly what that
Thank
means. And I'm also gonna ask, I happened to talk to someone from Liebenheim the other day. I don't know if it's come up today or at some point in time it'll come up. And the way they bill is they have 6 units as their base, and they move from that. So every water district is different.
Yeah.
Until a year and a half ago, we were rock solid, we were defendable, we could take it to the hill. And then suddenly one case got lost and we ran like mice to try to change the world. And it seems like we're not changing it to anybody else's, we're changing it to the way we wanna do it. I'd like to see how the other platinums, of which I think is only a Liebenheim, water districts, are and what they're doing. I mean, I'd like to get some comparisons. Are we out there doing this on our own? Versus, because it seems every water district does it differently. And I don't understand what the rationale is for that.
Yeah, strangely enough, I had a conversation with Kimberly Thorner recently too, and she explained to me they do it completely different how they're able to justify their tier structure, and I can't repeat it perfectly right now, but it may be something we may want to reach out to them. I'm not saying that they're better than us but they're different, and it made sense when she was talking about it. And one thing I really liked about it is their tier 1 went up to 6 units, and then they went, and they were able to justify it based off of I think their expenses as it pertained to what was in, into that tier one and the cost of their water for the different sources that they get their water from, and she went all into it. You guys would probably understand a lot better than I did, but, again, I'm not saying we have to do it just because they did it, but.
Yeah, at the last meeting we had, that's what, we tried to explain is how we got to the number of, I think it's 4 units, was we looked at that cheapest water that we have, the Eliminane water, and how much can you spread over the customer base for that lowest tier. And then when you run out of that water, and that was about 4 units, you can get about, on the residential meters, you can do about 4 units. And then you run out of that water, and then when you look at the next most expensive, or next least expensive, where you look at it, how far can that spread before you get into the pure desal water? Actually, you put half of the desal into the second tier and half just desal into the third tier.
Right.
So, and that's how we came up with the numbers. And Eliminane's makeup of supplies is different than ours. So each agency, there's no one standard that fits all agencies, and that's why we have to be careful.
And I understand the numbers for water are gonna be different for
Right.
everybody, because costs are different. Our tank costs 2,000 more, we're carrying $10 million more than somebody else.
Right.
I understand that, but why they use 6 units as their base, I mean, that's not price, that's the way of doing business. Vista, I understand, is the only one in the county that does it the way we used to do it, now we're changing from. But it used to be the Rock and the Standard, and we're doing it, and then I asked the other day, who else, only Vista? Well, then, we've been following Vistas, or doing the same as Vista, and not the same as everybody else. I'm just, where do all these different breakdowns come from?
Yeah.
You know, it's, and I don't know, 6 units, 2 units, 4 units, why isn't anything standardized? I mean, I don't understand it.
Well, part of the reason it's not standardized is there's no agency saying this is the standard to use. Each agency is expected to develop a rate structure that makes sense for their agency. And everybody's water supplies are different,
Sure.
their costs are different, their debt load is different, so everybody has to take a look at their costs and their facilities. And that's why you'll see it. Nobody's willing to go out there and say, this is the way you need to do it. And the other thing you'll probably remember at the last meeting when we looked at whether you're going meter-based or customer class, Tom did the analysis to show that going by meter size, there was less variability amongst the meter sizes than if you went into customer class. So more homogeneity, more likeness in there, and that's what we felt was better for Vallecitos. And we can't speak, or I certainly can't speak for what Eliminane or any other district is finding, whether they even looked at it from that perspective or not.
Well, the thing, I don't know, do we look at it as 6 units from that perspective? Did we do that internally? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that maybe they didn't, but maybe we didn't either, and I don't know. I don't know the one's better than the other. I
Yeah.
just know that they're all different, and not the price, I understand why the price is different. And going back earlier, maybe you can tell me, compared to other water districts our size, are we carrying way too much load? Are we paying out way too much in interest? I don't know. I mean, we could be, we might not be. How do I know that? How do I know if we're about where we should be on that?
That's a good question. We benchmark a lot of stuff with our peers, right? But I don't know if we've ever, maybe we haven't, but have we
I
ever
haven't seen it.
benchmarked our debt and?
Yes, we relatively recently we did, and we have our FA and our underwriters are actually watching our debt, and when there's an opportunity to refi,
No, but I'm talking about just just benchmarking how much debt we have.
oh yeah.
Are we,
yeah.
do we, are we on the extreme high? Are we right, does everybody have, kind of roughly the same amount of debt as we do? Are we on the extreme low?
Every surveillance, every 2 years, we go through that process too. Right now, when it's only our debt and it's very different, agencies that are built out shouldn't have any debt. Agencies that are growth agencies should have debt, and one of the things they look at, and I referred to it earlier with Director Martin's conversation, is the debt per capita load. And that's how they kind of compare and see, well, where are you compared to other agencies? And we were actually low, but then they said, well, wait a second, your same people in your district, the reason why they look per capita is that's your load. Every person in your district, every ratepayer is responsible for a portion of your debt somehow. Well, they'll take San Diego County Water Authority and say, hey, your same people are in San Diego County Water Authority's boundaries. So let's take San Diego County Water Authority's debt divided up by their 300,000 people, and then they say, wait a minute, Metropolitan Water District, that same person is burdened with their debt too. So by the time they stack all that debt on the per capita, then we're high. But without Water Authority and without MWD, we're low. But it's looked at
Isn't
every.
the county water authority's debt on our tax rolls?
No, the San Diego County Water Authority's debt is just rolled into their revenue requirement and charged to their member agencies.
But we pay through the tax rolls, don't we?
Their
Consumers?
debt, no. They have a portion of their revenue requirement on a debt roll for per parcel. It's like about $10 or so that they put on there.
So what you're basically telling me is no way to do what I asked.
What was that?
There's no way to find out what I asked.
Uh,
Where are we at?
I can,
compared to
you know, we
all
can
of
look
our
at our
surveys,
last,
right?
we can look at our last surveillance and we'll tell you where we're at. Yeah, I just don't have that information here.
Comparatively speaking, nothing's exact, and no
Yeah.
one's the exact same size.
That's exactly what they do. They compare it to the agencies in with our credit rating. So.
Because we do that with everything else, and we want a pay increase for a manager, we check everybody else.
Sure.
We don't do that for this.
Yeah.
This, we don't check anybody, we keep it quiet, but we do.
And then
They
John,
keep it
if
quiet.
you will, we'll come back with that next time with what our surveillance said. Yeah.
Get both pictures and SFPs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
Well, I
you.
know with Mike, it's just a couple of buttons. It's the chart man.
Right.
Thank you.
So, back to your slide here.
Yeah.
Is this rate structure that you're presenting, is this different from what you presented at the last meeting when we were covering this, the last
No.
workshop?
No, this isn't the
Okay.
rate structure. This is just the impact now. Now, what's the impact from that rate structure?
So could you go across?
So what do you
these
mean?
Yeah, let me
So
go.
it's-
Let me
yeah,
go.
so-
Let me take it. Let me take you through one of these things here. And,
You want me to be Vanna, or do you want to be Vanna?
no, that's
You wanna go to
okay.
the
John,
5/8?
please.
What meter size
You
would
wanna
you
go
like
to
to go over
5/8
in
since
time?
that's the most common?
Yeah, you wanna go,
Yeah,
the
alright.
first one is there.
First page.
Here we go.
Okay, that's a 5/8 inch meter. What you have all the way to the left, where John's pointing, is the commodity. What if you used one unit? What if you used 2 units? What if the bill was 3 units or 4 or 5? So we're trying to look at every scenario.
And
Or-
this, instead of being at 1,000, this is at the
748.
100 cubic feet.
748.
You get some
Yeah.
48 gallons.
A unit of water that you see on your bill.
Can we ever go to the other one, or is that just impossible?
We
To
would-
go to the standard.
Like to acre feet?
well, the other one is
1,000.
1,000.
1,000 cubic?
Yeah.
1,000 gallons is the other unit that's used. Only Fallbrook and Padre Dam
Yeah.
Escondido.
and Escondido are the ones that use 1,000. Everybody else uses 748. Anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yes.
and then
Yeah,
that first
gotcha.
column is the price of that
Per
unit
unit.
on our current rate structure.
Okay, so the first 5 units on the current rate structure, $3.08 a unit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that just took effect. It's supposed to be the wholesale cost, but we only pass through half of the wholesale cost. So if we pass through the whole wholesale cost, that would be like 355. Yeah. But anyway, but 308 is that first tier, and then it jumps to 412 through unit 17.
Okay, let's go across them, then that's where.
Okay.
Okay, so then.
Well, pick one.
Well, let's go with the, well, our
Pick
state-
12 unit, or 13 units is the average, so let's pick 13 units. So for this customer, now if we look across, now we're gonna
I
see,
prefer to use 5 units, that's a much bigger jump.
what's that?
5 units, goes from 308 to 439.
That's
For one
what
unit.
what each unit costs at that, okay.
Yeah, but so is it 439 for unit 1, unit 2, or is it
Correct, yeah,
350
that's-
for unit 1?
That's the unit, so that's the
Well,
cost
It's
associated
350
with
for
that
the
unit.
first
For the
4
first
units,
4 units.
and then for the 5th unit, you're paying the higher
Or
price.
then it
Yeah,
jumps
you
to
go
the higher
to
one.
the
Then
next.
every unit after that is 439 a unit
Okay.
until you get to the next level, and it jumps to 680 there.
Okay.
That's the that's with the projected numbers for.
Yeah, so you don't get penalized for the lower tier ones just because you went into a higher tier.
And also another thing to note is that this has 3 tiers and this has 4. So you got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then tier
Can I-
4 here, whereas this is 3.
Can I clarify something then for me? On that 5th unit where it goes up, is that
439,
after they use that 748 in that 5 in unit 5, or is it after they use the 748 in 4 and it's the first gallon they use in 5?
Yes.
So-
First gallon they use in, well, the
First
first
unit.
unit they use in 5, because if they only use 1 unit in 5, they don't get charged anything. 1 gallon in 5, they don't get charged anything. It's got to roll halfway through. if that makes
Okay,
sense.
You don't
It's
get
like
partial units.
yeah,
So 4.5 units.
4.5 would probably go to 4.
Okay.
So it'd have to be a full unit.
So, okay.
The first 4 units would be at $350, so it's that's $14,
Uh-huh.
and then the 5th unit would be $439.
And those fractions get corrected in subsequent bills, cause you're doing ultimate reads.
So
So our
far-
tier one's really only 4 units, or 4.5 units.
That's the
Well,
proposed one's
currently
40.
it's 5 units.
Currently it's 5,
Currently
correct.
it's five.
That's why there's a current hit. How much does that average out then, if you take the 439 and the 350 4 times?
Well, that's what you'll see when you start
That's
to
the
move
next
across,
step. We'll
when
go
you
across
see the
and
whole
we'll
bill.
explain.
Alright, there you go.
Yeah, when you see the whole bill. So just for example, what do you want to use for an example? Somebody who uses 5 units of
5
water?
units, let's
Let's
stick
use
with
5
5
units.
Okay.
That's right.
So currently, somebody using 5 units of water with the current meter charge is going to pay $46.86 on their bill for water, total bill for water, and they're ready to serve.
The current meter charge is what?
$31.42. The very first line is
That's
the ready to serve
That's
charge.
the ready to
Yeah.
serve.
And then when you add up all that commodity to it, it's $46.82. Now with the
Okay.
proposed one, and with the increase in the ready to serve to $34.21, it would be $52.60. I'm sorry, not proposed, projected. We don't have real rates yet.
Right.
$52.60. So the total increase is $5.78, 12.3%. And then if you just looked at commodity only, it's going up 19.8%. It's right at that point where you caught the higher unit. Yeah. So that's a good one to pick because that was the highest one on the commodity increase anyway. Yeah.
I do a little bit of homework.
Yeah, and then you can look at each one of those going across. You're looking at a bill with a different usage, and so I tried to capture every one. And then usually you don't see more than 30 units is a lot for a 5/8" meter, but you do see it once in a while. Very few, but maybe go up to 100 units.
That's almost a 20% increase.
That's correct from the commodity. The total increase was 12.3.
Water only.
If you were to use those numbers.
But it's,
Correct. Yeah, those are projected.
Okay.
but is it, so somebody who uses 5 units,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out your math here. So just that 5th unit is a 19.4% increase. But if you,
No, that's cumulative too.
oh, it's cumulative.
percentage
Okay,
cumulative.
so you wouldn't take the 13.6s and
No, it's
lower your overall for those first 5 units.
It's cumulative for the
5 units.
consumption.
Okay.
It's cumulative. Yeah, absolutely.
So why are the people who are using 22 units getting such a deal, or 21? Look at that, 2.9.
Yeah. Again, this is a new rate structure. This is looking at different and trying to.
Pays to use more water.
You're gonna see.
If you use 7.4, they get a reduction.
Currently, you have the jump here,
I'll use 100.
whereas projected, the jump is here. So that's why when
Yeah.
you hit this 20, you're still at this lower rate than where you would have
So
been.
it's a,
Where do these numbers come from? I know you just made them up. There's no adoption, but where do these numbers come from?
That's
Who's
all
guesstimating?
what I took you through last time at the workshop that we did, and then all the allocation. These were the results of that that allocation that we did.
We were talking about a 19% increase?
That's one bill scenario. Somebody that uses 5 units of water.
And that's just the commodity.
Just water.
Yeah.
That's a mobile home park user.
Well, you can't very likely, if you were to adopt this, if you were to adopt this, you can't very well say, by the way, your rate's only go 2.9% if you use 60 gallons, if you use 60 units of water. I mean, you can't use that number. You have to pick a number to use that's realistic as to what it's going up.
well,
for.
I think it would be the average, right? The 13 units.
Yeah.
Yeah, traditionally what we've used is the average use, but this is kind of giving you a bigger picture. Say, hey, well, you can't just look at the average. There's a lot of customers that don't use the average. Just kind of gives you a look so you can see what the range
I
impact is.
I don't know how I feel about people who use a lot of water not paying their as
Now-
much of an increase as the people who are. I would rather see it the other way around.
Just to put it in context, we're changing the structure, right? We're not keeping the same structure and changing the rates.
I know, but the structure we're going to is rewarding people who use a lot of water.
It's if you look at the structure by itself, the more you use, the more you pay. you're looking at it comparatively to this old structure that we're trying to use bring to a new structure. So it's still a conservation-based rate structure, and that's why you see 350 goes to 439, goes to 680. The more you use, the more you pay. So it's still a conservation-based. You're comparing it to the old structure. Yeah. And if you, with that philosophy, you'd say, "Oh, let's just keep the old structure because we don't want to see those increases." You know, this is what when you move to a different
Yeah.
structure, you're gonna
No,
get.
I understand. I
Yeah.
just, you know,
Yeah.
I've in the 2 years or 3 years that I've grown up in water, we've the thought process was always try to protect the frugal users and
Mhm.
hit the people who are either wasteful or are putting. I mean, to me, I think if you're using 60 units of water, you're obviously putting more strain on the system than the people that use 5. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. But
That's why it's still a progressive structure. It's just a different structure. It's still progressive. So if somebody, that first 4 units is going to cost you still a lot less than your, 26, 27, 28th unit. So
No,
it's
I
still
get it.
a
I
progressive
get it.
structure.
I'm just looking at
Yeah.
the increase.
Yep, yeah, you're looking at the change. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing you didn't see before. With the old, where we were going to change to, you would have saw 60% numbers on some of them as well.
So, one board member out of 5, but if I suspect your projected numbers are based off of some reality, right? I mean, I don't
They're
think.
actually, John, if you open
So-
a budget, they're based on when we did the budget last year. What did we project out to 17, 18?
Mhm.
So that's what I'm kind of using
Okay.
as a placeholder for now.
So,
Yeah,
I don't know how accurate those numbers are, but
yeah, we don't even have
we
proposed
got
numbers
it.
yet.
We can't if we're gonna base it off of the average of 13. I mean, I don't see a 10% increase getting past this fiscally conservative board.
Yeah, and the purpose of this is just to show the magnitude of the different uses and the percentages. When we get closer, we'll be plugging in those proposed numbers so you can see
Okay.
what it actually would be. Yeah.
And this doesn't include sewer. So,
Yeah, this is
before we
the-
used the $110, I think it was somewhere $109, $110 bill
Yeah.
As the denominator.
Right.
So these percentages would presumably go much lower when you
Yeah.
figure in water and sewer.
As I was I'm just thinking back to the last time we went through the 218 process, and I know it all fell apart, but if you look back and just see the heated discussion that took place with the board over a 5% per year
Mhm.
increase,
Yeah,
I
it's-
mean,
yeah, absolutely.
so,
Yeah.
just, you guys are the,
And are we looking at 3 parts to this? Are we looking for a change in ready to serve?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the
it's
ready
up
to
there.
serve is up there on the very top.
Yeah, the 3142 to 3421.
And you've got, and again, this is just what's projected.
Okay.
What actually gets
So that's-
adopted could be very different.
So even if you don't use any water at all, that's what you're
a
gonna be
9%
paying.
increase.
You use a number for that, what percentage is that?
8.9 people.
It's an 8.9% increase just on the ready to serve.
8.9 on ready to serve. Again, these numbers are bogus, but just looking at it, because they're up there.
Mhm.
For the average person, we say 14 or we say 16?
13 is
13.
average use now.
Yeah, we use 14, it's 10, okay, 10.6%.
That's commodity.
What about sewer? I know we're gonna get there at some point in time,
Yeah,
but
the rate structure
you can
study
do the
just
ta-da
one.
moment now.
We haven't done the budget yet, so
Oh, okay.
get to that one.
But you don't have the projected sewer like you have
We're
there.
not changing the structure, proposing
Oh,
to
I
change the
see.
structure
I
of
gotcha.
sewer. This is mainly just for the water rate structure.
So we're looking at a budget that we have to do as much work as the San Diego
Unified,
County.
San Diego
Board of
Unified
Education.
School District.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, each one of these slides is set up like that. Go to the 3/4 so you can see kind of the difference.
Okay, but
Not
5/8
much of a
is-
difference, just the
Which one's this one?
3/4 inch meter.
3/4.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
that meter charge is some can go up, some can go down. Again, it's a rate structure change. You're gonna have that.
3/4, 5/8, I thought we were staying the same on either one of those, because we induced the change, not the consumer.
We have a 3/4 inch meter is now the spec. So if any new meter coming in now is a 3/4 inch meter. But there's a lot of 5/8 still out there.
And the 3/4 inch pays more?
It looks like those numbers are the same.
They're supposed to be paying the same.
Yes.
And this one's the same.
3421
What
for
we've
both.
done in the past is phased it in so we didn't, the 5/8 inch didn't jump up so quickly. That can be the same
Oh.
thing this year.
why do they, just out of curiosity, why do they have a reduction in their?
Because we're trying to get the 3/4 and 5/8
Yeah,
together.
if you go
Actually,
back to the
one
other one, you
slide.
see it's the same under projected,
Oh, I see.
both are 34.
It was higher already.
The one's below it, the
Yep.
one's above it,
Yeah,
and they're
correct.
just getting to the same place.
Alright. These guys are getting a good break.
Okay, and then some of the meter sizes went down, and I think we said, well, the ones that are gonna go up, we won't go up as high, and the ones that are gonna go down, we'll keep there, because they're just gonna go back up again, to kind of stabilize things. But that was the purpose of this. Multifamily, we're seeing it's a little bit of an increase in a decrease in most of the categories I'm looking at, and we'll look at ag next time as well.
These numbers, would they maintain our standing in between the high and the low? Or are they moving us more toward the high?
In terms of where we are in with
Compared to other
agencies, compared to other agencies.
Compared to us, compared to us.
Right
to where
now,
our numbers are.
Yeah, right now, I think out of the 23 agencies, we're 7th or 8th, maybe 9th. We're in the bottom third. So I think we're about 8th, and with using last year's competitive, Oceanside's last year's numbers, we'd probably go to about 10th. We'd probably move two spots from the
Okay, you're
bottom.
answering a different question, I think.
Okay.
I didn't ask it.
The
correctly.
floor and the ceiling.
Yeah, the floor and
Oh,
the ceiling.
Yeah.
Are we looking to stay in the middle of that number? Is that what we're looking to go for? Are we spiking high?
Hmm.
Or what will that do to us if
Mhm.
those numbers were assumably taken? What would that do to
Yeah,
us?
if this was adopted as is, what would that green line look like? Trend
Yeah.
out
What would the
over
graph
next
look
year,
like?
2-3 years.
These rates as we're projecting and what we're gonna show you and propose when we get there, is the revenue requirement. What does it take to recover the revenue requirement? There's so many other numbers that go into where you're
There's
at.
no reserves built into this?
There's no reserve adjustment built into the revenue requirement. We
So-
assumed that it wasn't gonna be adjusted. There's a capital component, and we don't even have the capital budget yet, but what we used was last year's 5-year spending plan and kinda averaged out the capital.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the model, there is a line item for reserve adjustment. So as a board, you said we want to bring reserves down by so many million, boom, we just plug it in there. Or say, hey, we want to increase reserves to get close to that, boom, we can just
So,
put it in
but
there.
as this stands right now, I know some of the reserves are based off the capacity fees and not the rates, but there's nothing in here that would help flatten some of those lines out?
No, there's no increase or decrease to reserve balance. This just assumes we cover our current year expenses and then the average of the capital. But if we didn't average capital, your rates would be going like this, because it's so volatile how much capital you budget for each year. So, that's the numbers now.
Aren't the sewer rates, isn't that part of the 218 process?
Correct, they will be.
Yeah.
If there is an
So that-
increase, there will be.
So-
So that has to connect.
Yeah.
It will,
Oh, yeah.
they'll be together, and like Mike said, we'll explain to the customers, your combined bill will go up or down by a certain percentage.
Yeah. And the reason why we're on top of this and presenting you now, because we're proposing to change the rate structure. Sewer, we're not proposing to change the rate
And
structure.
if I recall from the workshop, I thought that there seemed to be a pretty good comfort level from the board with your proposed rate structure change. I don't remember there being, we didn't leave there with, hell no, change this, right? It was pretty much, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we were trying to get consensus as we went so we can keep going forward. And then the next time we present, we'll have the same type of analysis for multifamily meters, for ag meters, and then the progress we've made, since then.
Yeah, I'll never know enough about rate structures and how you guys are combining them, just being here, a couple hours a week to really be able to weigh in, just like I don't typically weigh in on the $1 million pipeline that James tells us that we need. I take his word for it because he's an engineer and I'm not. I'm more concerned about how, the more the budget stuff is. So,
Yeah, it's-
you know,
exactly,
how
it's
do
gonna
we-
drive
so
those
what are
rates,
these, the structure itself can be what it is, but,
Yeah, the numbers
what,
behind it.
yeah, the numbers
Yeah,
behind everything.
Absolutely.
So-
And then I'll also bring back what other agencies are doing as well. Next time we meet, I'll take a look at their cost of service studies and pick a couple other ones, and so you can see how they're structured.
Could you give us, or maybe you already have, the last 10 rate increases, the dates, and how much they were, and what percentage it was?
Just for our agency.
just for our agency.
10
I'd give
years
a little,
worth.
little history on, because this seems like it could be a huge jump or a dramatic jump that staff will be asking for, and the board's gonna have to justify. And that's a huge jump so far, look at those numbers, and I know that's not the Tanah number, because the Tanah number can be pointed to less.
When do
We're
we,
gonna get
So,
point two
so we
higher.
feel better about it, yeah.
when do we see the full effect of the desal numbers?
Well, that's in here now, because
It's in the
actually
projections.
2016 was the first full year of desal. So this is projecting a 2018 calendar year, so it's in
So
here.
everything's all rolled up.
Correct. Yeah, and
Well,
we deferred that. So.
Another interesting question is what percentage is due to desal only?
Yeah, we can get you
That's
that
kind of
too.
what I was getting
And
at.
it'd be a rough estimate because of water mix and all that, but yeah, we can
Yeah,
get that.
no, but that'd be
If there was
interesting.
no desal, what
Yeah,
would be and
If
what
we were
would
still getting it from
Right.
Met
Yeah,
instead of Poseidon, how much more is that? Cause
yeah.
that's a sell on its own.
It's
here.
about a $4 million hit a year, because I
Yes.
think we're spending about a little over $1,000 per acre foot more, and we're getting about 4,000 acre feet. So it's $4 million a year when the district decided to purchase the supplies of desal that they did. So, like Mike said, it'd be an approximate, but we could start pulling out $4 million from the budget and say, if we hadn't done the desal, here's what the rates would have been, and here's what they are with the desal.
And the way it's structured now, it would only impact tier 2 a little bit, and tier 3 would come down.
So
Tier,
there's no desal in tier
tier
one.
2 and tier 3 would be the same. We'd have 2 tiers if we use the
Yeah.
same methodology.
Have the letters already gone out to those people in the 10 elevations?
Friday.
Friday.
They went out
This-
last
no,
Friday?
this-
No, this
coming
Friday,
this-
we're gonna mail them out Friday.
And you're gonna be tracking all the calls that come in on it, if they do, what they are, who they are, where they are?
Yeah, customer
Right,
service.
yeah. I
John
know-
sent out the customer service folks, and they're prepared.
Yeah, I know we'll get 156 complaints.
156?
106.
Coronado Hills.
Coronado Hills.
Coronado Hills.
When we do get the complaints and when you present it to us, can you have a column for what district it's in? Or what division? Can you let us know what division the complaints are in, so if one of the board members wants to reach out personally, we'll know who they are?
Okay, I'll have to
Like-
figure out how to do that.
Well, like if it comes in
Because
from
we-
Coronado Hills, I don't know who that is.
Well, our-
That's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's the way that our phone system is set up,
Oh, I see.
you know.
But I mean,
it's-
are we gonna ask them for their address? Because that's how we would
We
do it,
can't
right?
usually, we put the account number on the letter.
Oh, okay.
So when the people call in, they say, I'm calling in because the account number is my account
Okay,
number.
so you
So
know
we
that.
can look it up and say, okay, you're in this pump zone, this is what you're paying now, this is your usage history, you can expect to see that.
So then the question is, whose district is that
the
pump
pump
zone?
zone,
Yeah.
which we can just do a matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to, the way the phone system is set up now, right now, it's not that way. We can track calls, like, this is this type
You're,
of call.
oh, I see. These are, you're thinking you're gonna get like people who leave voicemails?
Well, we're gonna get calls from 9 different pump zones, and we don't have the phone system.
But what I'm
isn't
saying,
set up
I know,
to
but if I call up and
track.
say, hi, I'm a customer, my name's Mike Sinella, is the operator not taking like, okay, my customer Mike Sinella complained about the pump zone, and then I can go, then you go back into the system and say, okay, where does Mike Sinella live, and this is his address, and this is the district that
The
he's
customer
in.
service rep would say, we got a complaint about odor, we got a complaint about water color, we got a complaint about water.
They're not
meter
tracking the
box.
customer's name.
No, there's 22,000 customers that we have on a monthly basis. So, yeah, and the way the system is set up, we can track the different types of calls, but not drill further back to the
Okay,
customer.
well, if it's,
You
I-
could-
I
if it's
can
that much
try
of a
to set
yeah,
something
but if
up.
it's that much of a hassle, then no one.
Yeah, I can try to set something up, and we'll see how far we can get with it. But I don't know exactly, and when calls are coming in one after another, we want our customer service reps to be answering those calls and servicing those customers too. 'Cause it's-
How many people do we have down in customer service at any given time?
Right now, we have three people, 3 customer service reps, actually customer calls, and then we have a temp in there, who's part-time. And then we have one lady up at the cashier reception, and then we have a supervisor for the department and 2 other ladies doing billing.
But they all don't answer the phone.
No, only when they go on breaks,
Yeah,
they'll cover.
backfill
Yeah.
when needed. but
Okay,
it's
so
not
it's
the
one
primary.
person usually answers the phone, or 2
3.
people, or?
There's 2 or 3.
Yeah, the receptionist gets the call, and
One's
then
designated.
if they say, I want to speak with customer service, she
Oh.
puts it back to one of the 3 who's available.
So there's no way to know if like we had one really angry customer that called us 20 times. We wouldn't know if it was the same customer calling 20 times or if it was 20 separate customers, right?
They'd remember that one.
They would, yeah, they know a lot of our customers, and we have routine, regular
More than
people who
local
call.
ones.
Yep.
Yeah, they know the voices down there.
Mhm.
I try to change mine, they know it.
Yeah,
This
figure you out. Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Get a voice analyzer.
Um, Well,
That's all I had for you, and if you have any other questions, and we'll, you know, like I said, as we progress, we'll you know, always be in front and trying to tell you how we're progressing.
I have something,
Yeah, I had something too
are
when you're
we
done.
ready to add things?
Yeah, we're on new business.
Yeah. I wanna add that I'd like to, in our next meeting, discussing copies of the MOU. I mean, everybody got a copy of the MOU, and that was kinda presented to us by the GM on his way out the door. So I don't really know what it says for sure, but I'd like to see what it says. So
Okay,
if we
we can
have
get
a
copies.
copy for,
Yeah.
maybe everybody at the board would like to have one too, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll
but I
send it
know
to everybody.
Definitely, the committee would like to have a copy of the MOU. Thank you for all this information, a lot to digest, and I will go home and digest it and come back with some questions that you're gonna say, we answered that last time, I go, yeah, but now I had a chance to look at it, rather than just getting it and then trying to. But I do appreciate you getting this in advance, because I really know I didn't understand it, so I understand it better today, thank you very much. That's it by me.
Yeah,
So,
I brought it up at the last meeting, but, and I can't remember the ordinance number, but, last year the board passed an ordinance that was gonna require us to compete any of our recurring contracts of over $100,000 a year, including, there was language, I believe, in that ordinance that said that we would catch up with any contracts that had, or agreements that hadn't been done, in the last 5 years, on a timely basis. I don't know if that, I'm paraphrasing the
We know what
language.
you're talking about,
Yeah.
our,
So,
purchasing resolution.
if we can, at either the next board meeting or the board meeting after that, have a list of what agreements or contracts that includes,
Yeah, we can do that.
and then come up with at least a rough timeline as to when we're gonna be competing those, ideally in 2017, because we're already probably 6 to 12 months behind on our compliance with that and that new ordinance, and we had good reason, because we were going through a GM change, and it would have been too much to potentially go through a legal counsel change at the same time, for example. So, but now that our management team is in place and has had a few months to get its sea legs, I think it's time that we get
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we've already been developing a list of the companies
okay.
And fuel. We've actually went and picked the fuel, the people who supply us our fuel for our diesel and our gasoline, and we price them out with other competitors. Fuel's a commodity, so it's gonna go like that. But then there's other variables in there. Can they deliver at 2 a.m. in the morning if there's fires? You know, what other things can they deliver that the other ones maybe not, because we don't have the relationship. So that's when we start looking at.
So when you, but I mean, are you guys going through like kind of more of a formal RFP process where you're creating your service levels that all these things that you're talking about, and then you're soliciting bids based, you know, you're providing that information to three to five potential suppliers, and then evaluating their proposals as to what their capabilities are, what they're charging for their services, and all of that? Or are you just, I mean, tell me more about the process that you guys are doing for fuel, because I didn't know you guys were even doing that.
It wasn't a formal process, but there's other suppliers that we're aware of, and we contacted them to get some pricing.
Okay, so
So it
the
depends.
the spirit of the, 'cause I'm the one that made the motion and it passed, but the spirit of it was for those, I don't think there was that many, it was like 4 or 5 maybe, if even that, maybe 2 or 3. My thought was we'd go through once every 5 years, go through a formal competition of those agreements. You know, so I mean, that was what my thought was. But more so than just calling up a few. I mean, I'd like to see what either the scope of work is or the SLA is, and then, you know, kind of see that process go through from an RFP standpoint. especially as it pertains to, our legal services. And I think the board, similar to what the involvement we had with the GM, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm new at this, but I think we're gonna wanna have more of a hands-on involvement with that, because in my opinion, those are the two positions that kind of report to the board, the GM and the lawyer, right? So,
Well, and at some point in time, I'd like to have a little more information on outsourcing, what we find is possible to outsource, what we find is not possible to outsource, any possible way to save money. As I know that you're doing right now down at the department, because you, staff brought it up, I didn't realize we were outsourcing, but we are outsourcing in your, billing department, or whatever.
customer service.
Yeah, and you do it because it saves you money. And it's like, well, that can happen in a lot of places where you don't need specialized people to do it. Even IT. I mean, not that you could do this, but you could outsource IT and have one or two guys come in and do your. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Most companies
I'd like to
do.
get some information on it for a company our size, 108.75 people. 105.25, whatever that number is, you know, what is really necessary and what's not, what could you outsource, I don't know the answer to that. So just other things. Next thing for the board meeting, I'd like to have the price given to us for what this system costs that you purchased apparently.
That's not new.
That was always been here
No, it was
and never
downstairs.
used?
No.
This system was in the training room when we used to have
Oh,
the
yeah.
meeting committee of
Oh, that's
And
cool.
recycle.
So our electricians
yeah.
pick it
Or
all up.
IT and
That's
everything,
cool.
yeah.
You might find out what they did with the camera. There used to be 2 cameras in our boardroom, now the one is gone, it was on a tripod.
It's in someone's office.
Yeah. And
Oh, okay.
thanks for doing that, by the way. I like it. It's a lot cleaner look without the
It does look
tripod.
like pretty, the tripod
Yeah.
sitting there.
Like,
like-
I mean, the last 2 board meetings, I meant to bring it up, and then I get carried away on other things, so.
Thank you, and we have a few esteemed people with us today. We have the president of the board. Sir, do you have something, questions you'd like to ask?
I don't have any questions, just a comment. It's a lot of great information. I really appreciate it
Okay.
from staff. Fantastic.
The same,
Director?
I learned a lot, thank you, good job.
Mike, special guest.
Representing the public.
We all
Um,
represent the public. We're
We
elected
have a
to.
deferred capacity fee payment plan in place. Apparently, about half of the new developments use it and half of them don't. Now, they can pay the fees either at the time of their choosing or no later than the day of occupancy. Now, as Director Martin has noted, there are considerable interest payments. So what fees does a developer pay if he decides to defer? Does he pay whatever is currently done? Or was it what was currently done previously? And if there's a rate increase coming through, do they have the opportunity to pay the old rates first by rushing to the bank?
No, seeing as it's a committee meeting, I'll try and handle that, but I'll be corroborated by staff. They pay the fees the day they pay them, whatever fees are incurred on that day. So whatever that day the fees are, that's the day they pay.
Yeah,
So if they pay it early, we actually could lose money,
right.
because our fees will never go down, they're always going up. So the idea is, by deferring it to 3 or 4 months while they're building the house, our fees may go up, and they pay it, they pay the higher rate, our costs stay the same. So we do have better actually by deferring the fees.
I'll have to think about that one.
Sure, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Now, deferred, we do have a backlog of capacity fees that are reserved for these new developments. Now, does that appear in your budgets as far as the deficits?
I don't know, Jen, how does that get handled?
You want me to address that?
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, we don't have a deferral plan, we just changed the due date. So there's no plan, just the due date of the fee is changed. And Director Martin hit it right on the head, you know, they when they pay it, boom, they pay the rate in effect then. And if they wanna pay it early, we'll take it.
Well,
Okay,
I
but the
think
deferred
que-
level is The
But, yeah.
current deferred.
The current deferring, we don't have a quantified number, but yes, that impacts the deficit. It's a timing difference, and unfortunately, the timing difference will be with us until we're kind of close to build out. But there is, it does make a difference in that deficit.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the question was, the capital fees that we now are charging, someone walked in yesterday and they're building 2 new houses, and we charged them X fees, and part of that was capital. Well, that money isn't spent yet. Where does that money go?
Well,
Into
actually,
what account?
it's spent already because of the deficit,
Yeah,
but
it goes in the capital.
to try to bring
Yeah.
up that deficit.
Okay.
It's all restricted money. That's the only place it can go.
So it
Is
all
that-
goes into restricted.
Correct.
Yeah, a capital facility fee does.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that doesn't necessarily, if you get an extra 16 grand off just 2 houses hypothetically, I know it's a low number, doesn't mean you're necessarily gonna change your debt payment
Correct. Yeah.
for that month or for that
It's
quarter or however.
too small to change
Yeah,
something.
and I mean,
It
even
would change
if
my personal debt.
yeah, of course. But if a Newland were to build, if my numbers are right, that's a $20 million capacity windfall.
Yeah.
If it's roughly $8,000 per unit between sewer and water, and they're gonna pay for all their own infrastructure to get them stuff up and running, and then they're gonna pay roughly about $20 million in capacity fees above and beyond that. You might make an extra little payment, right, on our debt if we came up with $20 million.
Yeah.
Well, they'll usually pay it by,
We paid according to the debt service schedule, yeah, if we were gonna.
But even then, you may not change how much if you're gonna follow that schedule, and all of a sudden we go from 52 million to 72 million in
Yeah,
reserves.
something we would look at. Yeah.
You would look at it,
Absolutely.
but you wouldn't
Absolutely,
automatically just.
It depends. A lot of other things depend what you
So,
have out in the future, what the interest rates are. If it's still a very low rate we'd have now, maybe we wouldn't want to pay it.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
it was a high rate compared to the market, yeah, maybe we'd want to.
Yeah, I think you'd be
Pay some
projecting
down.
what future costs you may have, and you wanna keep enough in reserve so that you wouldn't
Yeah.
have to be,
Yeah. To go to
you wouldn't have to
deficit
borrow
again,
what may be
yeah.
a higher interest rate.
Yeah, absolutely.
so if that's all the questions,
Well, I had one on the audits.
go right ahead.
There was a question of the water loss audit per service connection. Are you gonna be looking at every single service connection for water loss?
I think that's an average.
That's correct.
That's an average number.
Yeah.
So we
So how do
associate a
you
number.
compute? I can understand how you can do it for a service connection, cause if you got the timed metered, you can check for losses pretty easily. I've got one of the new digital meters on my own, and it's pretty easy to do.
I guess what they're saying is, for instance, the fire hydrant gets knocked out tonight, and we lose 10,000 gallons of water.
No, I'm saying per service connection. The
Yeah.
hydrant will be on a different line with its own service connection. My house has a service connection. And if you're saying every service connection the language was in there.
Yeah. No, it's,
Now,
Well, it's
it's not competing.
22,200, how many customers we have. Goes to everybody.
Yeah. No,
Everybody has
Dr. Martin has it. When they fill in those all those boxes you saw, then
mhm.
it's just simply taking it and dividing it by the number of service connections, whatever we estimate for that loss. It can only be an estimate. As we know.
No, you're only gonna do an estimate.
It's all you
If
can
we
do.
knew the real number,
That's
we
all
put
you
it
can
in,
do.
but we'll do the best we can to get
But
as
you
accurate.
can
as we
figure
can.
out one with the digital.
Well, with the audit, Mike's going through that now, and he knows
A lot of those
more of that
numbers are
stuff. But
definable, some of them are estimates.
correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Some you have to back into by finding as many of the knowns as
Essentially, the unmetered
possible.
ones are estimates.
Yeah.
And lastly, we've left the commercial out of any sort of tiering.
No, they're in there. It's by meter size, so all customers.
so-
are subject-
Whatever meter
The
size the
commercial-
commercial has.
Will be paying the same rates.
Correct. Yeah. If
Okay.
you have to know what the meter size is, and then you can look at that rate structure and see.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
decision was made to go with meter size, not customer class.
So we're not discriminating against.
Okay.
There's no discrimination against by customer type. They're all paid the same.
But the ag will still have to be handled
The
differently.
ags will propose to keep the way it is, pretty much, where it's one tier. It may be the second tier, and that's the one thing we have to still kick around.
I think with the marijuana, we need a multiple tiers.
We're not gonna
High
do this
tier.
committee.
Thank you.
With that, staff, I wanna thank you very much. This is invaluable to me. I understand it a lot better in this setting and with the information that you give me than I ever could in a board meeting. I'm a big believer in the committee structure, and I wanna thank the other two board members for showing up. I'm sorry Mr. Hernandez wasn't here. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you on March the
15th.
22nd.
22nd.
March the 22nd.
The finance meeting?
Workshop.
At our finance meeting.
Yeah.
March, we have two.
Oh, there's committee meetings?
March 22nd and one on March 29th, a week apart.
But we have a regular board meeting on the 15th,
On the
right?
15th, the regular board meeting.
All of those are at 5 o'clock.
Yep.
And the audio recording of this will be posted online
Eventually, I think maybe tomorrow, I don't know how soon we can.
maybe
do
by
it.
the end of the week.
We have those listeners waiting. Thank you very much. I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
guys.